Surah 81. This surah consists of two separate passages, of which the second, verse 15 to 29 in its original form, probably the earlier, the first, verse 1 through 14 is a description of the last day by a series of time clauses leads up to the emphatic statement in verse 14. Verse 8 and 9 fell a little out of form, but there's no reason to suspect that an addition has been made. Well, then why do you suspect it when there's... Anyways, the imagery is largely derived from Christian apocalyptic with adaptations to Arab ideas. That the second passage has been revised is practically certain. Verse 29 is an afterthought, and so is verse 28. Verse 26 is suspicious both in rhyme and sense. More important, why is it suspicious? How? More importantly is the change which introduced a reference to the vision of Surah 53 into a passage which originally referring to Muhammad himself. This was affected by inserting 20 and 21 and 23, perhaps altering the reading of 24. The noble messenger thus becomes an angel, no doubt Gabriel. Surah At-Takwir, chapter of the veiling. Is this the one that Michael Muhammad Knight calls like the Qur'an suicide note or something? Anyway, the last day, Meccan 1 through 14, the truth of the message, Medinan 15 through 29. So the Muslim World, volume 24, page 149, can be referred to the murkiness of the stars, the falling. The she-camel was a special time of care, particularly when it's, you know, totally pregnant, right? And the terror of the wild beast running about together, you know, not just running from an animal, but when they're confused, sometimes it just all mixes together. Humans can do that to crowds of animals, that they're all, you know, you don't do that, that's mean. The books of men's deeds, the pages being spread open. Of course, the outer reality that we have to respond to. Did you believe right about that? Here's how you know, here's the truth of it, where you believed correctly, where you believed wrong. The night that lingers, according to some departs, others comes on. The meaning seems to be prowl around. The passage seems to take its imagery from the breaking, the morning, the stars gradually falling out, the night departing, morning bringing with it pleasant breeze. Verse 15 usually taken to refer to the planets, but this is doubtful. Danin, literally stingy. A well-attested variant is Franin, opinionative, which was probably the reading when the passage referred to Muhammad. So yeah, so this thing about secret passages, the claim is that that's not true, that doesn't exist. And of course, we're reminded, well, where will you go? What opinion will you take? But he's not, you know, he's not you know, he's not avariceally seeking it either. He's like, what is revealed to him is what's revealed to him. He's not out there divining the secrets of the universe like a magician might, in the way that people, they call up angels and all sorts of stuff trying to figure out, oh, I want to know it's like, it's not about knowing the future or the past, it's about being guided, you know, or some universal secret. But Surah 82 begins with the description of the last day, verse 1 through 5, similar to that at the beginning of 81, but shorter and probably earlier, followed by a passage 6 through 8, loosely rhymed, reproaching man for his disobedience to a Lord has bestowed benefits on him, which is probably considered earlier and in itself has no connection with what precedes, but has been later extended by an addition to 9 to 16, the word al-Karim being added at the end of verse 6 to form to the rhyme of that addition. The new passage refers to judgment and the diverse fates of men on that day, Yam Adin, you know, time period, Yam, so a little bit wider than just a day, right? Although I guess it can refer to just that, but you know, later still, 17 through 19 were added in explanation of that phrase. Surat al-Infitar, chapter of the rending, the last day Meccan, 1 through 5. Boiling up, meaning uncertain. The usual explanation is that a channel will be opened up between the two seas, the fresh and the salt, and they will mingle. The idea is perhaps the upheaval by which the sea gives up its dead. Well, now we know that, you know, canals have been, channels have been dug that actually connect seas. But we also find that certain bodies of water go up, and then, things can be made to mix over time. Obviously, they're distinct when where the source is coming out, but, and the proportions of the human figure, the form and balance, but man's ingratitude, early 6 to 8. Man's deeds recorded and suitably rewarded, 9 through 16. Probably later than 6 through 8. The last day of judgment, 17 through 19. And judgment, as in the religion. See, that's the way. It's a system of judgment. Hopefully religion is that deen, but the recording angels, the guardians. Surah 83, verses 1 through 5, are a denunciation of those who give short measure. They are sometimes said to be Medinan, but more probably late Meccan. With them went 7 and 18 and were later discarded. 6, 10 through 14, 22 to 27 being substituted for them. At a later revision, 15 through 17 were with the former displacing 14, but 14 remains. 28 through 36 to the latter explaining the unintelligible. Tasneem, is that the ginger thing, or what's that mean? And contrasts the relative positions of believers and unbelievers in this world with those of the next, either at this time or earlier. The unintelligible words Sijin and Iliun, Iliyin, the bringing in and the bringing out, were explained not in accordance with what they must have meant in their original sense by the insertion of verse 8, 9, and 19, 20, and 21. Well, there's a lot of translations of the Quran don't translate all the words, which is tragic, really. Contained, held in, reduced versus the other. They make that's all I guess we need to know for now. Surat al-Mutaffifin, chapter of the scrimpers, giving short measure, Meccan, first 5 verses, 6 through 11. But we find the book and the Sijin, the meaning and interpretation of the word, and that of Iliun, verse 18, are uncertain. They can hardly have been books. Yeah, we're talking Arabic, not necessarily, you don't find some random word. He holds that the words are South Arabian. Barth suggests the word reading Tiyin, the under ones, to contrast with Iliun, the upper ones. Well, that's one way of putting it too. And because it does contain that meaning. And the reference was to the angels of the underworld and of heaven. So we do find, like in Greek myth and in other North African mythology, there's this idea of the vast open Elysian fields, and the pressed in sort of containment, like someone's trapped in a box or something. That, well, they tend not to make, even today, they tend not to give enough space in prison cells for it to not be shortening of the life, or, well, I mean, not the, for it not to be a reason why people don't live as long and mess with their mental health and stuff, just this spatial thing. Medinan edition, 14 and 15, and 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 25, 27, okay, to 27, and 28 through 36, same time as 15 to 17. And Tasneem, yeah, maybe that's the ginger thing, I don't know. Ginger, clove, what? but what's the non-single object meaning of that? Surah 84, the beginning is similar to those of 81 and 82, and is probably earlier than either of them. Verse 1 through 5, describing in time clauses what happens at the last day, lead up to verse 6, which stands out in a different rhyme and describes man restored to life, reluctantly coming to his Lord for judgment. The passage almost seems to imply that a restored earth is the scene of a theophany, and a similar idea is suggested in a following passage, which describes the different ways in which the good and evil are reckoned with. In any case, the passage, if later than 1 through 6, is still fairly early. Originally, with verse 12, verse 13 through 15 are Medinan edition, Surah 83:29, for the insertion of which the back of an early and not very intelligible declaration, verse 16 through 19, was used. The concluding passage, 20 to 25, deals with an attitude of unbelievers to the Quran. Its date is difficult to determine. The last two verses give the impression of it being Medinan, but 20 to 23 are more probably late Meccan. Surat al-Inshiqaq, chapter of the cleaving, in the name of Allah, the merciful, the compassionate. The last day, fairly early Meccan, 1 through 12. Amendable, to be made suitable for theophany and hierophany and epiphany, right? When the earth shall be stretched out, as the mountains are going to be leveled down and move and have their effect. Some mountains are going to have landslides. As, different stuff happens as time goes on with the earth. Shall cast up what is in it, shall give up its dead, become empty and unoccupied, ready for its Lord's purposes. The ultimate, every bit of dead thing is going to find its life so it can bear witness, but a different sort of life than just, billions of people piled on top of each other, trying to live a reincarnation, right? The judgment later, but still early, 7 through 12, given his book in his right hand, the book of yourself. There's, of course, the book of nature and the revealed books. Generations pass early, and Medinan part starts at 3 verses there, 13 through 15 and 16 through 19. The judgment's still later, 7 to 12. Okay, and there's people who reject the Quran. The date of it's uncertain, 20 to 25. And so Surah 41, ayat 7, the people trying to write in layer on layer, and their hearts, the gathering effect of night on the heart. There's meaning uncertain in the setback part. You will not experience one state after another. So no development, you could say, for people who haven't. And wild beasts gather at night. Yeah. And so Surah 85, the surah consists of 2 main parts, the first consisting of verse 1 through 9, of which 8 and 9 may possibly be rather later than the rest. The second of 12 through 22, which in spite of apparent breaks at verse 17 and 20, probably form a unity between the two. A later has been made. 10 is evidently intended to go with 1 through 9, dealing with the persecution of believers. 11 may have been intended to balance it by assuring believers of paradise. Verse 12 to 22 seem to be earlier than 1 through 9, and possibly the latter passage has been written on the back of the former. There's no very evident connection in sense. The reference to 1 through 9 to the persecution of the Christians of Najran, which I formerly favored, can hardly be maintained. The fire fed with fuel must be the fire of Gehenna, the hellfire. It may be in that the fellows of no, not in this case. Maybe in the fellows of the pit, there was a sub-reference to the Quraysh, slain at Badr, whose bodies are thrown into a well. In any case, the passage probably dates from about that time, and verse 12 through 22 are probably early Meccan. The origin of Islam, page 38 and 68, is what we talked about, the position that he used to favor. Surat al-Abridge, chapter of the constellations, persecutors of the believers consigned to the pit. early Meccan, 1 through 11. The pit, an unusual word meaning a trench. Sublimity of Allah and the Quran, early Medinan, 12 through 22. And preserved, if the passage be Medinan, it's probably a reference to the heavenly original of the Quran. And there's narrations that indicate Lawhin Mahfuz, right? What that is.